Well, welcome back, and I'm Christopher. This is Greg, and in previous YouTube videos that we were talking about, I had alluded to how the Health Care Act, or the Affordable Health Care Act, or whatever, was constitutional. Now, a Supreme Court justice, as I understand, or the Supreme Court, had ruled that health care was constitutional. And how is that possible? Well, first of all, it would say this way, is that it is a fact that nowhere in the Constitution does it give the Congress power to regulate or control health care. That's a fact, and the Supreme Court knows that. So what did they pass? Well, there's also another fact. Within the Constitution, there is Article 1, Section 8 deals with the power that's given to our Congress. And in their jurisdiction, they can make rules and make laws, if you will, and statutes that govern them within their jurisdiction, and they are not bound by the Constitution. And that is where healthcare falls. And why is that?
Well, most people don't realize that when the federal government was created, in the Constitution, they referred to the federal government as the United States.
Correct.
Not these United States, that's the 50 states, but the United States, singularly. That the Washington, D.C., that 10 square mile chunk of land was ceded from Virginia, I believe it was.
Virginia, Maryland.
Right. And it became the seat
of the government.
Right. And that 10 square mile District of Columbia is not a state.
No.
It is the
jurisdiction.
sole owned by the federal government. It's really, and the Supreme Court
Congress runs it by rule.
Correct.
Correct.
It's run by Congress.
Right.
Congress is the sole governing body over the District of Columbia.
Correct.
And the Supreme Court, in subsequent later years in Supreme Court decisions, determined that because of that, because the District of Columbia never ratified the Constitution,
Correct.
and was created by the Constitution, but in fact it can operate.
Hold on a second.
We got a plane going over, and we'll just let the plane pass, because I talk loud enough usually to overcome plane sounds.
I don't know how that's
But basically they ruled that that United States, D.C., if you will, was an autonomous nation, and that it had a responsibility to the 50 states under the Constitution to abide by constitutional law with respect to the state citizens, the citizens of the states, but that outside of that, it could operate as an autonomous nation, as its own individual nation. So, and they determined that federal territories, right? Colonies, military bases, any federal land, national parks, all fell under the control of Congress.
So that's correct, and so that's called jurisdiction. So here's the thing: is that what a lot of people don't realize, that there are two types of citizens in America, in the United States, and there is U.S. citizens, which are federal citizens, and then there are citizens of the states. And the states determine who their citizens are by habitation and domicile. Okay, a lot of times we use the word resident. Okay, but yet the states will determine who their residents are, or by way of their habitation and domicile. That's why you have a driver's license from only one state. You don't have multiple states.
When did that change, Chris? When did there become U.S. citizens?
Well, the U.S. citizens are born out of the 14th Amendment,
which came after the
Civil War. Or actually, I always think about it like during the Civil War, because part of that was that the Northern aggression by way of the federal government were forcing the states, in the southern states, in an economic thing with respect to slavery and such as that. But the states walked out of the Congress. So the 14th Amendment was passed, and many believe that it was passed improperly. I don't believe that the evidence will show
look,
that
at
it
the
was
end of the
ratified.
war, the North won.
Right.
So the North wrote the 14th Amendment,
right.
and they wrote the 14th Amendment for simple reason, because after the war was won by the North, the southern states were invited back into the Union. Okay, but what was happening is the southern states themselves said, well, wait a second, we're sovereign states, and okay, you want to free the slaves, that's fine, but we are going to make it difficult, if not impossible, for slaves to actually participate in the electoral process.
Correct.
So they created what they call the Jim Crow.
Because states, and even now, states govern their own electoral
who determine
laws.
who their citizens are. States determine who the citizens are. So they put up these difficult laws, they were called Jim Crow laws, and they made it difficult for blacks to register to vote and become members of the voting bloc. So the North then said, well, wait, we can't have this. So they created the 14th Amendment. And then they tried to force the southern states to ratify it, and the southern states didn't. Right. And that's a whole other decision. But the point is that the 14th Amendment became law. ratified legally or not, it became law, and it's been practiced
And
by the federal government since. And it created a United States citizen.
Correct.
Which had never
It created a federal citizen.
Correct.
A citizen, as it says in the 14th Amendment, a citizen subject to the jurisdiction thereof.
Of the United States federal
now,
government.
in this 14th Amendment, if you look at it, go look at it, it'll say that it offers or secures to these citizens subject to the jurisdiction thereof privileges and immunities. Immunities are protections, privileges are benefits. Okay? Our Congress puts out for these U.S. citizens privileges
and immunities.
And immunities or protections.
The word rights does not appear in the 14th
They don't
Amendment.
secure rights because rights are inherent within ourselves from our Creator or their natural
Correct.
rights. So these U.S. federal citizens are completely controlled by the Congress, and this is what you're seeing in the healthcare debate.
Right.
So in the care of
before we go there,
wait.
the Supreme Court ruled, following the 14th Amendment, because of course it was challenged, the Supreme Court ruled that the 14th Amendment did what? It created two classes of citizens
Correct.
in America. And there are a dozen Supreme Court decisions that confirm this, that the 14th Amendment created two classes of citizens. It is clear that there are now two classes of citizens in America.
We know.
United States citizens and state citizens.
That's
and that
correct.
these are separate and distinct from each other. You can be one and not the other. And furthermore, or both. And furthermore, to deny otherwise would be to deny the states the ultimate proof of sovereignty, which is to determine who the citizens are.
Right.
Now that's the Supreme Court of the United States. They're basically
I
saying,
think that's the slaughterhouse case.
the slaughterhouse case. They're basically saying, okay, you want to create a U.S. citizen, fine, but you cannot ever deny the states the right to determine who their citizens are, because to do so would be to say they're no longer sovereign states, they're nothing more than a division of the federal government, and that's not the case in America. So, Supreme Court, law of the land today, as it was then, because those Supreme Court decisions have never been overturned,
Correct.
is that there are two citizens.
That's correct.
There are U.S. citizens and there are state citizens, and you can be both. You can be one or the other, but you don't have to be both.
Well, which is part
That's
of the work.
the law.
Part of the
Don't
work
forget
that
about
I've
what
done.
you and I are
know,
saying.
but
That's the
I
law.
agree. And that's some of the work that I've done is I help people establish their state citizenship with some of the passport work that
When you
I've
get
done.
into immigration and
no,
you
I
get
know.
into health
But
care,
I'm just saying,
this is a
see,
huge issue.
But this is the great thing about this is that you can see that this is why I was saying before that healthcare was constitutional. This is what the Supreme Court said it was constitutional, not because it's in the Constitution, but it's within the power that we have given the Congress to regulate or dictate or empower people that are in their jurisdiction. And the U.S. citizen is in that jurisdiction.
How do you become a U.S. citizen,
Look,
Chris?
but healthcare.
How do you become a wait a second.
Well,
how
you
do you
can
become a
declare it.
U.S. citizen?
By either living in a federal enclave, if that's what you claim, but you by declaration.
Or by declaration. So how do most of us become U.S. citizens?
Well, we say
what's
that
the
we're
first thing we do?
Well,
we do what? In fact, when you're born
you
now
can get-
and you get a birth certificate, what's the first thing they do?
Well, the birth certificate is issued by the state.
Right.
The
But what is
Social
the federal
Security. Social Security is one of the ways that
issue you a Social Security number.
Right. So Social Security numbers are part of those are for U.S. citizens. When you immigrate in this country, they immigrate into the federal zone or as U.S.
When
citizens.
you fill out your 1040 tax return and you sign it under the bottom under penalty of perjury and declare yourself to be what? A U.S. person or a U.S. citizen?
All these things,
declare
voting, many times, driver's license, you're declaring to be a United States citizen, and none of these people are questioning the term United States. They're not questioning what is the basis of this citizenship. So with this in mind, and I have a class I teach on this subject as well. If you're interested in this kind of a class, just email me at Christopher@DestinationFreedom.org, and I'll be glad to send you information on that. But the thing about it is that this is why I believe the Supreme Court states that the health care is constitutional. Because within their jurisdiction, they can provide privileges and immunities.
Correct.
And look, health care is an immunity. It's a protection.
It's a privilege. It's a privilege.
And if they want to tell you that you got to get, if you want to get you have to get a microchip in so they can track your health, or you're going to get immunization, or any of these things.
You have no rights.
You're not. If you're a U.S. citizen, they're going to cram this down your throat whether you like it or not.
Privileges and immunities.
And the U.S. citizen is not a right. You don't have a right to be a U.S. citizen. U.S. citizenship is a privilege given by the Congress. So here's the thing.
And all you have to do is declare it. Say, I'm a U.S. citizen.
Correct. So therefore, it's a privilege. Therefore, the taxation that goes to pay for this is an excise tax.
Absolutely.
And that's how they can say that
That's what
it's
they did.
constitutional. So that's why.
And as a privilege, your labor is not your right. Your property.
Correct.
You see, the Supreme Court has ruled time and time again that a man's labor is his property. And so whatever he does in exchange for his property, when he gives up an hour of his labor and he receives some other property in return, whether it's coins or money, there's an exchange of property, but there's no gain or no profit.
But that's not for a U.S. citizen.
That's not for a U.S.
No,
citizen.
a U.S. citizen is out of a privilege, and so therefore
purely a privilege.
So here's the reality of history.
Your labor is a privilege.
Is that the blacks
It's
at
theirs.
that time, when they were slaves of the masters of the South, when they adopted this federal citizenship, they just changed to a more
Masters.
friendly master.
Yeah.
But that master's
A
turning out to
benevolent
be
master.
A benevolent master.
A more benevolent
So,
master.
but they never came out of the slavery.
Nope.
And I'm asserting that the rest of America has gone into that slavery
Correct.
ignorantly, becoming a 14th Amendment citizen. 14th Amendment citizen does not secure rights. That 14th Amendment citizen only has privileges
So
and
what you
immunities.
need to do is do some research, do your homework. Don't trust Chris, because he's a shady character, and don't trust me, because I'm definitely a shady character. Do your research. Just do your research. Find out what the difference is between a U.S. citizen and an American citizen. Go to the Slaughterhouse case. Read it. Read what the Supreme Court has said about state citizenship versus U.S. citizenship, and what you'll find out is there are two citizens in America, and you may or may not be.
You may want to be a
You
US
may not want to be
citizen,
a
federal
U.S. citizen. And what does that mean, being a U.S.
Well, you can
citizen?
contact
and
us
so
and
with
let us
respect
know.
to health care, which you talked about,
Right.
health care clearly is for U.S. citizens.
Well, I'm not a U.S. citizen. I'm not a federal citizen. I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm not a U.S. or a federal citizen. Therefore, I'm not going to be subject to health care, nor am I going to pay for it. And that's the bottom line. And nor am I required to by law. So that's the way it's going to show up. And if you want to know more information, you can contact me at Christopher@DestinationFreedom.org, and I'll be glad to get you more information. We can talk on the phone, whatever you need.
So much.
So anyway, all right. Well, we'll talk to you soon. We'll see you in just a bit.
Ciao.